Greetings, citizens. Hey you beautiful creepy human being you. Welcome to my channel and welcome to today's true crime video. I'm so happy we could meet like this. I'm so happy that somehow in all of this craziness, today you and I were able to find each other on this crazy little planet that we call home. My name is Brittany or BRATTERSTEIN, whichever you prefer, and today we're going to be talking about a crime that rocked Scotland in 2018, and that was the murder of 6-year-old Alicia Mcphail. But before we get started, if you have not yet had the pleasure, please make sure to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing that bell. I put out a new video every single week, and I would love to hang out with you. Yes, you, specifically you, but I can only do it if you join the Brat Pack and become one of us. One of us. One of us. One of us. And you can also follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. They are all BRATTERSTEIN, but no pressure. Before we get started today, I need to thank our sponsor, and that is Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning platform that is designed to help lifelong learners learn skills that'll benefit them for a lifetime. And bro, I don't know if you know this about me. You may not, but I am a lifelong learner. I teach myself everything. I always have. I'm that type of person. I need to be hands-on. I need to learn, but I also need to do it at my own pace. I don't know if you know about this channel in particular, but I'm a 100% solo project. I do all of the setup, I do all of the filming, I do all of the editing, I do all of the research, I do all of the writing. Like, that's who I am. And it's because I am a control freak, for one, and also I like to learn, and I wanted to teach myself to do all of these things so that I would be able to do them in the event that I ever needed to, and I need to. I can't outsource anything, man. I have to learn how to do it myself. So if you're anything like me, you will love Skillshare because it is an online learning community that offers thousands of classes to a community of members across 150 countries. And they also offer these classes in a variety of subjects, from classes on things like photography, creative writing, productivity, or what I'm most excited about, and that is a class on how to utilize the program that I already use for video editing. Like, I use this specific program for video editing, and they have a Skillshare class that teaches you how to maximize that application. And man, when I tell you, that is a game changer for me. So recently I did start taking this new class, and it's a class called The Guide to Davinci Resolve 16 Video Editing, and it's taught by a man named Christopher Navarre. And I have been really enjoying it because it's giving me the opportunity to take something that I already regularly utilize, my editing program, and use it to its full potential and learn how to do things that I had no idea even could be done. Like, I don't know if you noticed, my editing's pretty basic, and it's because I taught myself the editing, and now I have this class where I can learn how to do even more things on there, and I'm like, bro, that's pretty rad, because I didn't even know that that could be done. And that's just one of the reasons that I find Skillshare to be beneficial for my life, being able to take classes that help me utilize things that I already use on the daily. And also, it's wonderful because with Skillshare classes, you can work them around your schedule, which, as a new mother, that's incredibly beneficial for me because, like, my free time is limited. If you too were to become a Skillshare member, you would have access to a multitude of different classes on pretty much any subject that your heart desires. So you could scratch your itch for learning, but you could do it on your own pace. And that for me is incredibly important. So, big news, huge news, good news. Skillshare is offering the first 1,000 members of the Brat Pack to click the link in my description box, 1 month of free access to all of the classes that Skillshare has to offer. Isn't that fantastic? I think that that's great. And don't forget, it's the first 1,000 people. All you have to do is click the link in my description box to gain access. So, if you're like me and you want to join a community of rad lifelong learners and dive into some new classes on some skills that could benefit you for a lifetime, make sure to click the link in my description box because the first 1,000 people will have the opportunity to peruse, explore, experience all the classes that Skillshare has to offer for 1 month free today. And I just want to say a thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video because that's super duper tight. And of course a thank you to you guys for always being so supportive of all my sponsors. You rock, don't ever change. So now that I'm done spreading the good word of Skillshare, we can go ahead and get into this video. Now this video is on a case that I had never heard about before. I had never heard of Alicia, I had never heard of what happened to her. And I actually came across her video while I was doing research for next week's case. I researched that one first and then this one, but I'm filming this one first. I came upon Alicia's story while researching that one, and as soon as I saw her face and just read a couple of headlines about what happened to her, I felt compelled to learn everything. And I literally, bro, I was in deep, like over 60 articles deep, just manja. I could not stop reading about it because it's fucking crazy. My jaw was on the floor. I could not believe what I was reading. This case is horrifying and so sad, dude. And once you hear about everything that happened to her, who did it, why, and the craziness of this person's trial, it's just insane. So today I'm going to tell you that whole story, and when I am done, I'm going to ask you the question of the day, and I want you to keep it in your mind during this video. And that question is this: do you believe that Alicia's killer got the appropriate sentence? And if not, what do you think he did deserve? Now, with all of that said, please come, gather around, and let me tell you the horrible story of the murder of 6-year-old Alicia McPhail. Now, I want to start this video off with a quote from Alicia's mother that I think perfectly captures the horror that was what happened to this little girl. Her mother, Jeannie, said of her daughter's murder, and I quote, "Even the devil itself would be disgusted in what that thing has done." 6-year-old Alicia McPhail was born October 22nd, 2011, and she was a beautiful little girl, an actual spitting image of her mother. It's insane how much she looked like her mama. They could be twins if they weren't mother and daughter. Yeah. Alicia was a typical wonderful child. She was friendly, full of love, good-natured. She loved gymnastics, riding her bike, helping bake cakes, listening to music. She loved acting, performing in school shows like The Lion King. She wanted to be a YouTuber, and she would even, oh my God, she would watch YouTube, which adorable, but even more adorable. She made YouTube videos talking about her love of pasta. And if that's not so pure it could make your heart fucking explode when you hear what happens to her, I don't know what is. Alicia was said to have a gentle soul, and she was the type of child that left a lasting impression on anybody who encountered her. She was super friendly. Like during breakfast club at school, she was the first kid to welcome everyone first thing in the morning because she was just like a little considerate thing. She was popular with all the other kids in her school, and she was even often late for her classes because she would stay back just chatting away with somebody because she was just so friendly. She was just a happy, smiley girl. She loved unicorns and butterflies and bubbles and Peppa Pig. She was literally a 6-year-old girl. On July 2nd, 2018, Alicia was asleep in her bed. Well, not her normal bed. It was the bed that she had at the home that her father and her grandparents shared. Alicia's parents had her very young. I believe her mother, Georgina, who went by Jeannie, was only 16 when she had her, which would have made her father, Robert, about 20. Now, I didn't see how long they were together when Alicia was born, but I did see that they separated when Alicia was only 3 months old. So that's hard, right? That would be hard for anybody. I have said before, being a parent, hardest thing in the world. Being a mother, no offense to fathers, but like, get out of here. That is the toughest thing in the world. It's a totally different experience. I can say that firsthand now from seeing it, living it. It's different. So to go through that, separating, being a single mother, yes, did they have joint custody? Yes, but she had Alicia most of the time. She had Alicia all the time, and Robert had Alicia every other weekend, from the way I understand it. And that would be really hard for anybody to deal with, but apparently Jeannie just like loved Alicia. She was her whole world, and she said of her daughter's birth, and I quote, "I was only 16 and she changed my life for the better. She gave me the best 6.5 years of my life." So when the couple did split when Alicia was 3 years old, it was decided that they would have joint custody, but Alicia was going to stay with her mother and her sister Courtney on the mainland for the majority of the time. And she would come over every other weekend to stay with her father, her father's parents, which were her grandparents, Caleb and Angela, and her father Robert's girlfriend of 2 years, which was a girl named Tony. All 4 adults shared a house together on the island, and Alicia was going over like she normally would. It was a little different this time. This time it was a little different though, because this was the beginning of Alicia's 3-week summer vacation, so she was going to be spending a little more time with her father and her grandparents. She had arrived just a couple of days before she was killed, and she had lots of big plans. The type of plans that only a 6-year-old could have. Well, she wanted pizza, which, I mean, that's a plan for me as well. She wanted to go dancing. She wanted to go to the beach and the swimming pool. She wanted to go for walks in the country. She wanted to play on the trampoline in her father's yard. She wanted to go on a children's train and do donkey rides. She was just full of energy. Her father said of this, and I quote, "We were never in. We were always doing something." Before she was abducted, she had had a really good day. She had taken a ferry over to the mainland because she was going to go to a party, but unfortunately when they got there, they had actually missed the party. So instead she went to a park. She had this balloon and she beat her grandfather in the back of the head with the balloon over and over because she was 6. Later that day, the balloon escaped from her and she chased it down the beach until it popped. She was 6 and she had a really good day. She ended her day off by having pizza with her family, but of course she had to take a bite of her dad's piece of pizza because his just must have looked so much better than hers did. She went into her grandparents' room and she jumped on top of her grandpa and gave him cuddles and told him that she loved him. And then she went in her room to lay in her bed and watched YouTube videos on her grandma's phone. At around 10 p.m. that night, her father, Robert, went into the room and told her, you know, it's time to get off the cell phone. You've watched enough videos. It's time to go to bed. But, you know, she was an adorable little thing, so she was able to keep watching a little bit longer until the batteries on the phone died. Then she laid in the room bored because the batteries were dead and she couldn't watch her videos anymore, so she started to bang on the wall. So her father went back in there and put in a DVD of Peppa Pig for her to watch until she fell asleep to kind of distract her so she'd stop hitting the wall because she was a little kid. Her grandfather also popped in and let her know, hey, guess what? She's like, what? He's like, I have a cartridge for your bubble machine coming in tomorrow so we can actually use the bubble machine. And she was stoked out of her mind because she loved bubbles. She wanted to have a bubble birthday party one day in her life. So that was really exciting news for her. And then they left her in the room and she watched her DVD until she inevitably fell asleep. And finally, the room was quiet. The adults started winding down for the night. And Robert's girlfriend, Tony, went in the room to check on her one more time before bed and turned the DVD off of Peppa Pig so that everyone could just go to bed for the night. Tony later said in trial through tears of this moment, and I quote, she was sleeping and her face was facing the wall and her hair was behind her on the pillow. Hours after this, Alicia's murderer entered their home. He opened the door to the sleeping girl's room because it was the door that was closest to the front door. He was able to gain access to the home because the front door was actually unlocked and the key was left in the lock. Apparently, even though it doesn't feel like this was that long ago, this was pretty common for the area, which blows my mind. Apparently, like, this little island was really safe. It was a tight-knit community. They were still the type of place where people weren't locking their doors at night because they just felt like everyone knew everybody and everyone was safe. He then swooped Alicia up and he left the house heading down to the beach to walk along the shore because I don't know if I mentioned, but this is a seafront home that she was taken from. As he was walking, Alicia was drowsy, but she started to wake up and she looked up at the person carrying her and was like, who are you? And he said that he was a friend of her father's. He knew her father and he was taking her home. But he was lying. Well, he was sort of lying. He did know her father, but he was not taking her home. He then carried the 6-year-old to a secluded location. Along the way, she said she was cold. So he actually took off his top and gave it to her to keep her warm, which was a big, big difference to what he was going to do next. And that was that he raped her and he murdered her. And then he took his clothes off and he threw them into the sea before heading home like nothing had ever happened. Her murderer was 16-year-old Aaron Campbell. Aaron Campbell was born May 7th, 2002, and he was one of 2 children. He and his sister were both born to parents Jeanette and Christopher. He was born in Shrewsbury, but his family moved to the Isle of Bute when he was a small child. Aaron had a bit of a troubled childhood, obviously. How else could he do something like this? And according to him, his mother was an alcoholic and his father just wasn't really around much because he had a job that kept him away from home often. And he claimed that he was subject to both physical and emotional abuse. He did have some mental health issues growing up. He was said to have had ADHD and depression and a history of self-harm. But despite this, he was still a popular kid, having many friends at the school he attended, and he was good at math and physics and had plans to go to college and become a video game designer. He liked parkour and he liked to lift weights. He liked making videos of himself on the trampoline and he liked swimming. He was, well-liked, lots of friends. He would often go out and drink and smoke weed and party. He loved gaming and he wanted to be a YouTube star. And he even uploaded a couple of videos to YouTube that have since been taken down, YouTube saying that it was a sign of respect for Alicia's family. All of this is to say that despite the bad upbringing that he says he had, he was pretty well-adjusted or appeared to be well-adjusted to his peers. His friends just thinking that he had like a dark sense of humor, but it was more than that. There was more bubbling under the surface of this guy, obviously. And by the age of 15, he was already considering doing something excessive or extreme, like raping someone or necrophilia, because dream big. And he had been feeling this way for a full 12 months before he actually did abduct and murder Alicia. I mean, in 2017, about a year before all of this happened, he had sent a Facebook message to a friend saying, and I quote, "Might kill one day for the lifetime experience." Now, if all of that isn't bad enough, Aaron also had one of those personality traits that we often see in young murderers that make one pause a bit and go, maybe you doing that is a little bit of a red flag, my guy. And I'm going to give you a quick pop quiz so you can kind of guess which one it is and see if you're right, because I know that you guys like this. Did Aaron Campbell, A, enjoy starting fires? B, enjoy torturing animals? Or C, enjoy watching violent pornography? I'm going to give you a second here to put your answer down below. Don't cheat, pause the video, put your answer, and then I will reveal the truth. The truth? The correct answer. If you answered C, that Aaron enjoyed watching violent pornography, I am so sorry, you're wrong. I mean, it's possible that he also enjoyed that, but the verified true answer is actually A. Aaron enjoyed starting fires, and he was even put into a rehabilitation program for this compulsion. Now, you may be wondering how 16-year-old Aaron would even know 6-year-old Alicia. And Alicia didn't live there all the time, so how did he even know that she would be in that bed on that night? Well, apparently, it was all coincidence. Aaron apparently knew Alicia's father, Robert, and Robert's girlfriend, Toni. He even claimed during the trial that he and Toni had a sexual relationship at one point, but it seems by the trial, from what I can tell, it seems like that wasn't true, but we'll get into that a bit later. And I guess that Robert, which was Alicia's dad, used to sell Aaron weed. Aaron loved weed. Big fan of the devil's lettuce. So that's how Robert and he knew each other. They would meet together at a bus stop that was near Aaron's mother's home. They'd do the exchange. He'd give him the money, he'd get the weed, da-da-da-da. But they had recently had a falling out. They were no longer working together over a drug debt. And apparently this was 10 pounds, which is equivalent to $12 US. So it was a super small drug debt. But apparently, like, Aaron thought that Robert's weed was whack. Like, your quality isn't up to par, my guy. So he didn't pay him for it, and they stopped working together. And on top of that, I guess Aaron's mom found out that Robert and his girlfriend were selling her underage child weed, and she was like, could you please stop feeding my child drugs? We are going to get into like the coincidence of him finding her and all that in just a second. I'm just going to tell you what was happening that night. So as Alicia slept in her bed that night, Aaron was having a party at his house to celebrate finishing his exams. So he invited over, it was a pretty decent sized party. He invited over 15 friends, which, okay, to me, that's like a large party because like, I don't even have 15 friends, like in real life, you know what I mean? But anyway, he invites them all over on Snapchat. He's like, hey, come over, let's raise the collective roof. They came, they partied, they got drunk on Mad Dog and wine, of all things, and they all left before midnight. Honestly, perfect party, except for the Mad Dog. The wine can stay. Anyway, one friend was still kind of kicking it around at about 12:30, and he found Aaron in his bed, apparently really upset, suicidal. He said that he and his mom had been arguing all night after the party because of some furniture that got damaged during the party, and he was just feeling really down. And his friend was kind of worried about him and was like, okay, would you like me to stay here with you, or would you like to come back to my house? Let's hang out. I don't want to leave you like this. And he's like, no. It's cool, baby. He didn't call him baby. He might have called him baby. It's cool, my guy. He did call him my guy. I'm just going to hang out, I'm going to get stoned, and I'm going to go to bed. So the friend left, and then Aaron, did try to find weed. He contacted a bunch of people, started messaging him on Facebook, texting. He even tried to message Robert, and then was like, oh shit, I owe that guy money. So you know what I'm going to do? Because I'm a genius, a 16-year-old genius. I'm going to instead call Robert's girlfriend and try to get weed off of her. Which is it just shows how young he is and how dumb he is. So he tried to call Toni. He tried calling her at 1:47 a.m., then again at 1:48 a.m. And then finally he realized, like, I'm not going to get a hold of anybody. Nobody's going to sell me weed. So you know what I'm going to do? Great idea. Wonderful idea. I'm going to go steal some weed. And who has some weed? Who usually has weed on tap that I can most likely steal? Robert. So Aaron grabbed a kitchen knife and he left the house. And later when police searched his home when they were investigating this case, they found that there was a knife missing from his mother's block and it matched the knife that was later found. But anyways, he grabs the knife and he makes a short walk over to the home where Alicia slept. It was only about a 5-minute walk. He says when he got there, he found that the door was just open and that it wasn't going to be a struggle for him to get in. So he left the knife on the shore and then entered the home. He says when he entered the home, the first door he saw was Alicia's, and he opened the door and he stumbled upon the little girl. He didn't even know that she was going to be there, and he had no intention of taking her when he first got there. But he said that once he saw her, he felt differently. He said of this moment, and I quote, "At any other time in life, murder would not have been the conclusion. If I was a year younger, I don't think I would have done it. All I thought about was killing her once I saw her." So he scooped Alicia up in what he called a moment of opportunity, and you know what happened next. The indictment said that Aaron removed Alicia's clothes before shaking her violently and then putting his hands over her nose and mouth and around her neck. The following morning, Alicia's grandfather, Calum, C-A-L-U-M, Calum, I believe is how you pronounce it, he got up at 6 a.m. and when he got up, he went in the room to check on Alicia, but he found that there was no sign of her. So he then alerted the rest of the household so that they could search for her, and he said of this, and I quote, "We searched under beds, in wardrobes, but there was no sign of her anywhere." They didn't believe that Alicia had left voluntarily because, for one, she had never run away before, and two, her bike was still in the yard, so it's not like why would she walk off when she could ride off on her bike? So they were like, okay, something's clearly wrong here. So at about 6:30 a.m., her grandmother, Angela, called the police and reported her missing. It was at this point that everybody mobilized, really searching for her, and Angela posted a post on Facebook to like the local community to help anybody that could help, if they would help, to try to locate her faster. Now, while all of this is happening, Tony, Robert's girlfriend, noticed the missed call she had on her phone from the night before from when Aaron was trying to call her to buy weed. She tried calling him back, but he didn't respond to her, or he didn't answer the phone. Later, a couple of hours later, he did send her a text saying that what he needed the night before, it didn't matter anymore. And that makes me so frustrated. He added at the end of this text 2 laughing emojis. It didn't matter anymore. Ha, ha, fucking ha, man. And she was like, okay, that's cool. But if you could do me a favor and be on the lookout for Rob's little girl, Rob's wee girl, because in Scotland they say wee girl, which is just like the cutest thing to me, and it makes me so sad. But she's like, can you watch out for Rob's daughter because she's gone missing? And he responded to this quote, "Oh, damn. Am sure she's not went too far." And then the letter X, which I assume is like, at first, Tony did think the messages were weird. She thought him calling her was weird, but she had just more important things going on that morning, obviously, so she just kind of put them out of her head. As time went on and Alicia still wasn't recovered, the Scotland police really put it into high gear to try to find her. They brought in a helicopter to search for her, and the Coast Guard even went up and down the shoreline. And it was during the search that the first ominous clue that something horrible had happened to Alicia was discovered. And this was at about 7 a.m. when a knife was found on the beach near the home. And they were like, well, this definitely doesn't look good. And the next thing that was found was even worse. And this was at about 9 a.m. And that's when a man named George Williams made a call into police that he had found something horrible. George had seen Angela's Facebook post where she was asking for help in the search for her granddaughter. And George decided he would go out and do just that. He would try to search for her. And he found more than he bargained for. In a wooded, secluded area, an area where an old hotel used to stand, about 15 minutes away from where Alicia was stolen from her bed, George stumbled upon her naked, lifeless body. He crouched down and tried to feel for a pulse, but there was none. And when he touched her, it was very clear that she was gone. So he called 999 to report what he had found, and he said to the dispatcher, quote, "I found the wee girl. She's dead." She was just lying on the ground in that wooded area with a pile of her clothes laying beside her. So the family hadn't heard yet that she was found, because all of this happened really fast. I mean, they noticed that she was gone at 6:30 and she's found by 9, so they didn't know that she had been found yet. And Grandpa and Grandma were standing outside having a conversation when they see an ambulance just whip past them. And Grandpa stops mid-conversation and just yells towards the ambulance, like, if that's my granddaughter, I want to know. Is that my daughter in there? Is that my daughter in there? It was that kind of energy. That's the only way I can relate it, is to Mystic River in my mind. That's where my mind goes. And the family's told, like, hey, go to the police station for an update. So they're put in a room where they sit for 5 minutes before an officer comes in and gives them the horrible news. And that's that she had been found, but she was dead. Now, this is already so fucked up, but you want to hear something that's just going to make you so upset? Oh my God. So Alicia's mother, Jeannie, was 70 miles away when all of this was happening. And she found out that her daughter was dead on Facebook, dude. She found out that she was dead before even knowing that she had gone missing. Now, I don't know how this happened exactly. I don't know the dynamics of the relationship between Jeannie and Robert and Robert's parents. My guess is that they're not good just from like context clues. There's nothing specific that's said, and I could be way fucking off base here, but just little things like this make me feel like maybe the relationship isn't strong. But basically what happened is Angela posts on Facebook that Alicia's missing. Okay, she's found 2.5 hours later, so there's not a lot of time, like a lot of turnaround time here. So she posts that she's missing. Her body gets found, and articles posted online about her being found, and people go to Angela's page and start flooding her page, her like post about trying to find her with like, RIP, I'm so sorry for your loss, etc., etc., thoughts and prayers, all that bullshit. And this is what Jeannie sees. I saw screenshots of this on like an article where screenshots of Angela's post and all the responses to it, and it just like blows my mind that that is how Jeannie found out. Grandma and Grandpa and Dad said that they did try to call Jeannie. They tried to get a hold of her to tell her, but they weren't able to, which is possible because this was really early in the morning. Maybe she was still asleep. But this is not the way to find out that your kid is dead. I don't know how it could have been avoided. It's just, it is what it is. But my God, it's horrible. And I guess Jeannie even commented on that story, like she hadn't gotten a hold of them yet and was like, what the fuck? Call me, this is my kid. Anyways, back to the investigation. So an autopsy was performed, obviously, and it was determined that Alicia had been brutalized. The 6-year-old had injuries to her neck and her face that indicated she had been gripped, while injuries to her nose and mouth indicated that she had been smothered and her windpipe had been pushed shut. The pathologist determined her death to be, quote, the result of significant forceful pressure to the neck and face, end quote, and if that isn't bad enough, which it is, her genitalia had received, quote, catastrophic injuries, worse than he had ever seen before. Fortunately for police, Alicia's murderer had left DNA, and apparently a lot of DNA. It was found in her pajamas. It was found on her neck. It was found on her face. It was found on 14 different parts of her body. This is a 6-year-old child who had just finished primary 2. It's disgusting. People were just blown away by this, dude. Like, how could you not be? Apparently, like, especially because of the location, because it was on the Isle of Bute, the Isle of Bute was considered to be, quote, one of these places that is incredibly safe. Alicia's funeral was attended by hundreds of mourners who wore pink in her memory. She was buried in a pink casket that was decorated with unicorns, and dozens of bows were tied to the railings of the building, while cuddly toys like teddy bears and unicorns lined the walls outside the funeral home. And at the end of her funeral, a bubble machine was used to spray bubbles all over all of the attendees because, as I said, Alicia loved bubbles and wanted to have a bubble birthday party. Her mother, Jeannie, left her flowers, and with the flowers was a card that was filled out in her daughter's memory, and this card said, and I quote, "To Mummy's little girl, I still can't believe you're gone, my angel. Every single day will be harder than the day before to walk this earth without you by my side. But I can do this for you and your sister. I love you more than this world, princess. Fly high. It's not goodbye. It's only goodnight, my sweetie, until we meet again. Love, Mummy." The funeral director who ran the service called Alicia, quote, the best big sister, the best daughter, the best granddaughter, and friend that anyone could ever ask for. Alicia's uncle, who was named Calum, just like her grandfather, also gave a speech, and he said of Alicia, and I quote, "Alicia would rather hurt than you. She had a great amount of love for absolutely everyone. Alicia is everything that I wanted to be. She was kind, caring, smart. I just cannot believe she's gone. She was the brightest thing." Alicia's teacher, a woman named Emma, also spoke at her service, and she said of Alicia, and I quote, "Alicia was a bright and bubbly little girl. She always came into class with that big, beautiful smile of hers. It was an absolute pleasure to have taught Alicia. I'm so grateful to have known this special little girl." After the funeral, hundreds of people lined the street to watch, what is it called? The funeral procession, like where all the cars drive to the cemetery. They all lined up in the streets to watch this go down, and this was led by a horse-drawn carriage. It had these like white horses, and it looked like Cinderella's like pumpkin carriage. It was so beautiful, and the horses had like these pink feathers, and it carried her small pink casket to the cemetery. And she was just so loved, dude. She was so loved, and everyone felt so fucking bad for her family that even after the funeral, for a while after, people still came and left flowers, cards, all of this outside of her family's home. Now, after she was found, this case was being treated as a homicide because clearly she didn't do these things to herself. The local police commander stated that every available resource of the Scotland Police Department was being used for this investigation. Searches were done all over Bute. The streets were heavily patrolled, and officers even went house to house asking questions. Parts of the island were even cordoned off while forensic experts searched for evidence. The beach was heavily searched, and many items were recovered. In addition to the knife that was initially found, a couple of dog walkers found a fleece jacket, jogging bottoms, boxer shirts, shorts, a t-shirt, and a small girl's discarded pajamas. Now, we come to the person that really helped bring Erin Campbell into police. It's actually really sad because this was Jeanette Campbell. Yeah, Erin's mom. So, man, this whole thing, I feel so bad for her, to be honest. I know that he says that she was an alcoholic and she was abusive. I never did see this confirmed, and some people said that it wasn't true, that she was a wonderful mother. Who knows what's real? Murderers lie, but also different things happen behind closed doors. But either way, this must have been so difficult for her. So basically what happened is that Jeanette decided that she should check her CCTV footage because she knew that she didn't live far from where the little girl went missing, and she thought that maybe she could see something useful on her cameras. I don't know, maybe like the little girl wandering by somebody else, wandering by something that could help the police. And it's lucky that she even had these cameras installed because they weren't always there. I guess at some point her mother lived with her, and her mother had dementia, so she put up the cameras to see if anything, you know, if her mom wandered out in the street, just so that she would be able to keep an eye on her, essentially. Anyway, she checks this footage, and I can only imagine that when she saw what was on the footage, her jaw must have just like fell right to the ground, just like me when I was researching this case, because she sees her own son leaving their home multiple times during the time that Alicia was missing. So she goes to where her son's sleeping in his bed. She probably fucking kicked the bed and was like, yo, bro, what the fuck? Like, I don't think that's really what she did, but that's what I would have done. Sir. And he was like, what? And she asked him about it, and he was like, no, what are you talking about? I was out smoking. I was out looking for my phone that I lost after the party. Like, obviously I'm not connected with what happened to a little girl going missing. And she says that she was satisfied with that. She did believe him. But she still did mention this to a friend of hers, and her and the friend talked and decided that she should still turn the footage over to police, if anything, just to exclude him from being a suspect, in case somebody else came out with footage of him leaving the house. I'm sure that the friend was kind of like, yeah, maybe you turn that into the police just in case, so that you can rule him out as a suspect. But really, like, low-key, the friend was like, your kid's fucked. You know what I mean? Anyways, even though his mom believed him, the police did not. Or maybe they did a little bit in the beginning because they brought him in as a witness and they questioned him, and they said he was super cooperative, super calm, super chill, didn't act like anything was wrong, answered all the questions, had an answer for everything. Everything was wonderful. But they must have not really believed him because they arrested him on July 4th, and he was transported to a police station in Glasgow where he was questioned again. And by this time, his vibe had changed a bit, and he was no longer answering questions. He said no comment to everything. Later, he told a psychologist once he was arrested that he was, quote, mildly amused that it took police 2 days to arrest him. Anyways, the day after he's arrested, he was charged with the rape and murder of 6-year-old Alicia Mcphail, and he told the High Court, quote, I have never met Alicia Mcphail. So Erin pled not guilty to the abduction, rape, and murder of Alicia Mcphail. And initially, apparently, during this case, Erin's identity was kept a secret because he was under 18, but later there was like a request put in for his identity to be revealed. Now, apparently in Scotland, if you are tried of a crime, if you are a living victim of a crime, or if you are a witness of a crime, your identity is kept secret like forever. But there was a request put in after the verdict was read, and Erin was found guilty, spoiler alert, of this murder, and his identity was revealed. And apparently this was the first time this had happened in Scotland's history. Now, I personally think it's great that his identity was revealed for a lot of reasons, but one in particular is that, okay, when he pled not guilty, he entered a special defense of incrimination, which essentially means that he claimed that somebody else had committed this murder and named somebody specifically during the trial, right? And this person was over the age of 18, so their identity was released to the media. And their identity, their name, was dragged through the mud because their name was the only name that was synonymous with Alicia's murder. And it was all bullshit and it was all a lie. So I think that he can fuck himself and like his face and his name should be out there instead of this person's, but we're going to get into that more later as well. The trial began in February of 2019 and it lasted for 9 days. And during these 9 days, there was an overwhelming amount of evidence presented against Aaron, both physical and circumstantial, that painted such a clear picture about what happened. The court was shown CCTV footage from cameras installed by Aaron's mother that captured him leaving his house at just before 2 a.m. and returning just after 3:30 a.m., then leaving and returning again for 2 short periods. Additional footage that was supplied by members of the public showed an individual believed to be Aaron walking along the shoreline at 2:25 a.m. carrying something that is believed to have been Alicia. A pathologist also testified that Alicia's feet were clean at the time that her body was found, which indicated that wherever she had gone, however she got to where she was found is what I mean to say, she was carried. For the 17-minute walk from her home to this place, she was carried, which means that this asshole had 17 minutes to look down at this child, make a different decision, but he chose not to. A cybercrime expert testified that the day before Aaron was arrested, he made a search on his phone that was, quote, "How do police find DNA?" And then he went to a website that explained the process of collection and like how long DNA stays on, etc., etc. And why was he searching this? Because Alicia's killer had left DNA all over her body, dude. It was on her. It was on her clothes. It was on the killer's clothes that were then thrown into the sea. And all of this DNA was found to be a match to Aaron. A forensic scientist even said the odds of the intimate samples belonging to anyone else was more than 1 billion to 1. And as if that wasn't damning enough, which it is, a 16-year-old girl also testified at trial that hours after Alicia's body was found, Aaron had made a Snapchat video, like a mirror selfie of him in the mirror. And he sent this to 25 people. And he had the words on the screen that said, "Found the guy who done it," in reference to Alicia's murder. His best friend said of this Snapchat message, and I quote, "At the time knowing him, I thought it was a joke. He had a dark sense of humor. A lot of us do." He continued while looking at his friend in the courtroom, saying, quote, "I was one of the last folk to think he'd done it. A lot of folk jumped on the bandwagon once he was arrested." He then paused and said, "Now, I'm not so sure." Aaron's mother also testified that the clothing that was found on the beach did look like clothing that had belonged to Aaron. She also testified that the knife that was found on the beach did look like a knife that was missing from her knife block. And she said that even though she did believe his story when he told her that he had nothing to do with what happened to Alicia and he had been out, smoking, looking for his phone, all that, she did believe him. But when he got home, he came home missing clothes that he had been wearing when he left, and he came home and got straight in the shower. Now, this guy's defense was wild. First, he tells the court that he was getting weed, right? He was buying weed. A couple people testified that he tried to get weed, but that nobody had supplied him weed. He then says that he was out looking for his lost phone, the same thing he told his mom. And then he said that he had spent that night having sex with Tony, Alicia's dad's girlfriend, okay? He said that they had been having sex for a long time, that they were like friends with benefits, right? And then on this night, they were in a garage, bang. And that during intercourse, she alluded to the fact that she had murdered Alicia because sweet nothings. He then said that she had kept the condom the two of them had used, and that she had then taken that condom and used that to plant his DNA all over Alicia's body. What? That is absolutely such a wild thing to claim, especially considering how brutalized this little girl was. Her condition was so bad that forensic scientists and officers had trouble keeping their composure while they were presenting evidence, and one officer broke down crying in the witness box, okay? But his attorney basically said that Tony was jealous of Alicia. Tony was jealous of the positive attention that Alicia got from her father. They essentially said that Robert was physically abusive to Tony, but wonderful to Alicia, and that this just drove her crazy. And when she was asked like how she felt and if she could believe that people were saying that she was jealous enough of Alicia to kill her, like jealous enough of her boyfriend's daughter to kill her, she said, and I quote, "I always knew that Alicia would come first. I knew that if I wanted to be in a relationship with Rob, I would have to accept them both. So she was just like, what the fuck, dude? Like, she said that she loved Alicia to pieces. And Alicia's grandmother, Angela, even said that Tony and Alicia had a wonderful relationship. This poor woman, dude, like, I feel so bad for her to have her name linked with something so horrible. To have this person accuse you of something so disgusting. And then for this person to be able to stay anonymous so that your name is the only name that's linked with this and everyone is talking about it and thinking that you did something, especially when this is a child who you love. That is horrible, dude. Like, and she said that she felt horrible, and she added, and I quote, "She knew that I loved her, and that's what I'm trying to keep in my head. I'm sad, I'm hurt, I'm angry." Lots of different emotions. Aaron was brazen as fuck, dude. He answered questions on the stand for hours without accepting any breaks that were offered to him by the judge, and he was able to explain away every piece of evidence like it was no big deal, and he was, quote, "strikingly composed, unfazed, and articulate." He agreed that blaming an innocent person for this crime would be an evil thing to do, and said that he had met Alicia, but he had not killed her, saying, and I quote, "Absolutely not. I could never do that." The judge said that Aaron had a staggering lack of remorse and not even a flicker of emotion during the trial. And basically, once the verdict was read, he was just like, "Get out of here, get away from me. It's up to people in the future to decide if you're ever going to be released from jail." The jury deliberated for only 3 hours before coming back with their verdict. Aaron Campbell was found guilty of the abduction, rape, and murder of 6-year-old Alicia Mcphail. The evidence against him being overwhelming, and the judge said that Aaron had committed, and I quote, "some of the most wicked and evil crimes this court has ever heard of in decades of dealing with depravity." The judge added, quote, "I have no idea why you did this. I do know that the evidence against you was overwhelming." Aaron had no emotional response when being read his guilty verdict, except for the fact that he turned and grinned at Jeannie, Alicia's mother, and Alicia's family while they sat. And it makes me fucking crazy. Apparently, Jeannie, like, lost it. And when he did that, when he turned, she, like, stood up and she started screaming at him, and she called him, like, a vile, disgusting rat. And she said that if she didn't have her daughter with her, she would have done a lot more than yelled. And other members of her family essentially told him that he needed to watch his back. She also said that she wished Aaron had been put to death. And she said that she herself wishes that she was dead too, that she wants to be with her daughter, but that her young daughter Courtney is what keeps her going. She said of Aaron's sentence, and I quote, "He doesn't deserve to breathe the same air as my family. I never imagined that I would ever be in any situation like this. Someone has killed my baby. It rubs salt into our wounds, the fact that he is still alive and she isn't. It shouldn't be like that." Alicia's grandparents, Caleb and Angela, made a victim impact statement saying, and I quote, "We are utterly devastated. Alicia was a beautiful, smart, funny, and kind girl. We are traumatized. We do not see how we can live a normal life. Her future was taken, and so was ours." Jeannie also released a statement after the verdict was read that said, in part, and I quote, "Words cannot express just how devastated I am to have lost my beautiful, happy, smiling, wee girl. I'm glad that boy who did this has finally been brought to justice, and that he will not be able to inflict the pain on another family that he has done to mine. Alicia, I love you so much, my wee pal. I will miss you forever." That line got me a little bit. Oh man, in my feels. Get it together, get it together. She also said that she planned to visit Aaron in jail because she said that through the trial it was very clear that it was Aaron who did this, but he pled not guilty and he denied it through the whole trial, so she didn't know why. Why did he kill her daughter? She essentially said that she has questions that only he has the answers to. But Jeannie was not going to have to visit Aaron in prison to get the answers she wanted, because a month later Aaron came to have his sentence read to him. So he was found guilty. A month later he was going to be sentenced. And it was at this time that it was revealed that Aaron had changed his tune. He was no longer saying that he was innocent. He had actually admitted to the crime in great detail. He had been interviewed by a forensic psychologist after he was found guilty, and he told this forensic psychologist that he was, quote, "quite satisfied with the murder," and that during the trial it took everything in him not to laugh, and that he had to zip his mouth. This makes me crazy. Aaron went on to say that he, quote, continued to experience thoughts of killing and having sex with children and having sex with dead bodies, end quote. The judge described the teenager as a cold, calculating, remorseless, and dangerous individual completely lacking in victim empathy before handing him down a life sentence with a minimum term of 27 years. The judge added that if Aaron had been an adult, his sentence would have definitely been longer, but that typically they aim to rehabilitate young offenders, but that he didn't really believe that rehabilitation was going to be possible for Aaron if he was honest. Alicia's mother said that her world has been ripped apart by what Aaron has done, and that she continues to have nightmares over what he did to her child. And she said of his sentencing, and I quote, a life sentence should be a life sentence. He should have no human rights, and he doesn't deserve anything because he is inhuman. So, later that same year in 2019, Aaron appealed his sentence, saying that the amount of time he was given as a minimum was excessive. And this appeal was successful. 3 different judges agreed that this kid's minimum sentence was excessive. I can't. They didn't dispute that he should never be released, but shortened his minimum sentence from 27 to 24 years, which means he will be able to apply for parole when he is 40 years old. Okay, that seems incredibly low to me, considering what this kid did, but apparently from what I read, at the time at least, this was the longest sentence that was ever given to a minor, and since this wasn't that long ago, it might still to this day be the longest sentence that was ever given to a minor in Scotland. But for clarity, that's not when he's going to be released. That's when he can apply for parole. There's still a chance that he won't be released, but I don't know, man. I really hope he's not. That might sound fucked up, but I don't care because what he did is so horrible and for literally no reason, and that shit is terrifying to me. And I'm clearly not the only one who feels this way, because a psychologist testified about this, about Aaron's rehabilitation. His name was Dr. Gary something, we'll call him Dr. Gary. And he said of Aaron's potential rehabilitation, and I quote, I am of the view that the capacity for change may be limited due to the nature of Aaron Campbell's personality structure and his complex risk factors. I apologize to the court for appearing pessimistic. However, I am not confident that Aaron Campbell has the capacity or desire to change his behavior in any meaningful way. And as such, the risks will remain for the foreseeable future. Alicia's family was so upset by this. Her uncle was outraged. He said of Aaron's successful appeal, and I quote, I am angry, upset, done with it. I'm angry at the decision. He should be tried like an adult. He doesn't deserve to have been given any less or even an appeal. This case got a lot of people in Scotland talking, man. It got people having debates about like the media's influence on youths and how it can make them violent, and how video games and smoking weed could have contributed to what happened. And it also got people talking about minimum sentences for minors and whether or not minors should be tried as adults, because apparently in Scotland they never try juveniles as adults, where in America we do that, which it makes more sense not to try juveniles as adults because they're not technically adults, but at least in America maybe we should, I don't know, reevaluate the way that we sentence minors, because they're very, very low, so maybe instead of trying them as adults we just change like the minimums for minors. But anyway, in Scotland they looked at this case and they were like, bro, not just the intensity of what he did, the callousness of what he did, how horrible that crime was, but also the way he acted in court, the way he didn't give a fuck about what he had done, that he was pleased by it, satisfied with the murder, the fact that he tried to blame Tony, an innocent woman, for this murder. It made people in Scotland be like, fuck, maybe we should be trying juveniles as adults because this guy, like, fuck this guy. And in addition to talking about that, people in Scotland started having a debate about whether or not children should be tested early for traits of psychopathy. A doctor who assessed Aaron after his conviction argued that young children should be tested for psychopathic traits so that interventions can start early. He said that the opportunity to detect these things early in children is being missed because of the fear of stigma the child may feel. He said, quote, you don't become a psychopath on your 16th birthday. And he said that he was speaking out now, even though he had felt like this a while, because he didn't want nothing good to come from Alicia's death. And I don't know how I feel about this. I don't really see how it could be a bad thing. I guess it depends on what types of tests are done. I guess there's that stigma thing, but I think maybe the stigma of a few kids could be worth catching these traits early to possibly save other kids in the future, but I'm just really not sure. I don't understand enough of the science behind it and the way the brain works to know if that could be a good thing or a bad thing. But there's so many times that we see these early warning signs that could have been caught, could have been treated, and they're not. So it's kind of like, what is the right thing to do here? There is a group in Glasgow, I believe it is, that's working on this though. It's a group that goes by the acronym IVY, and it stands for the Interventions for Vulnerable Youth Project. And they work with young people who present a serious risk to harm others. It's funded by the Scottish Government and provides treatments and recommendations for ongoing risk management. There's a team there of health and social work specialists who have supported more than 200 12 to 18-year-olds to date, many of whom have already perpetrated very serious crimes or have made very explicit their plans to do so. But the key for this plan, this group to be effective, is that the kid who's put into the program has to be willing and able to engage and try to get better. So they have to want to be there. So I don't know how effective this could really be. Now, why did Aaron do this? I don't know. Nobody really knows. I did read a really good article written by a woman named Libby Brooks, who was actually present during Aaron's trial. And she said of Aaron and his apparent unknown motive, and I quote, "Naming Campbell did not reveal a monster, but an ordinary boy bouncing on a trampoline, adopting an awkward American accent for his YouTube channel. Whatever Campbell is, and I do not have the training to begin to speculate, he was hiding in plain sight. And perhaps this is the most obscene conclusion of all, that there is nothing to understand." The most obscene conclusion of all was that there was nothing to understand. I think that line, first off, beautifully written. And I think it completely illustrates this properly. He just did it because he wanted to. He wanted to kill somebody, so he killed somebody. He didn't care. He didn't have feelings about it. He showed no emotions, and he felt happy to have done it. He was seemingly normal besides the fire thing. He went to school. He worked out. He made YouTube videos where he streamed video games, and he did parkour on his trampoline. And then one day, he picked up a child, he raped her, and he murdered her. That's terrifying. After her death, there were several tributes put up in Alicia's honor, ways for her family, her community to remember her. And most notable of these tributes were 2 benches. I initially thought there was only 1 bench in her honor. You'll see why when I start describing them, but there were actually 2 put up in her honor. In May of 2019, a pink memorial bench was unveiled on the Rothsay Promenade. The bench is pink and sparkly. It has a plaque with unicorns and the words, "In loving memory of Alicia Mcphail, 10/22/2011 to 7/2/2018, donated by caring people far and wide." It has her name in little colored letters on the sides and on the front, and it's covered with flowers, stuffed animals, and seashells. It was unveiled by her father while he was surrounded by balloons and bubbles from a nearby bubble machine, because again, Alicia loved that. And it's a place where friends, family, anyone who wants to remember Alicia can go and sit and remember her. Shortly after this, another pink bench was unveiled in her honor. You can understand my confusion with 2 separate pink benches. I only saw that there was a difference when I looked up photos. And this one was presented by her mother in Airdrie Park. It says her name, Alicia, with a butterfly on either side of her name and on the sides, with a golden plaque that reads, quote, "In memory of Alicia Sarah Mcphail, 10/22/2011 to 7/2/2018. Sleep tight princess. Love Mummy, George, and Courtney." In addition to the benches, a large wooden playhouse inspired by Alicia's classmates' memories of Alicia was decorated with their pictures of unicorns and butterflies and was built in the school play yard. It's supposed to be a lasting tribute to the child with the infectious smile. This was meant to be a place for any of the children of her school to go, to have a meeting place where they could make friends and have a chat like she loved to do. Her head teacher said that she was confident that this would have won Alicia's, quote, seal of approval. And it's meant to be a place for her friends and future children can go, have a giggle, play with slime, read their books, just be a kid. On the year anniversary of Alicia's death, her school, her classmates put on an assembly for her. Her family was present, and the kids of the school, like, break my heart, they sang her favorite song, which was Light of Mine. They also had a pin made for the occasion that they wore on their clothes. It was like a pink sparkly heart, and in the center of the heart there was a unicorn that had rainbow hair. And it's something that Alicia would have loved, because Alicia loved unicorns, because she was a 6-year-old baby girl. And with that said, that is the story of the murder of 6-year-old Alicia Mcphail. I know that's like a hard one, so let's take that all famous collective breath, because truly, what the fuck? Like, I talk about a true crime case here, a horrible story here every single week. I look into a horrible story almost every single day, whether it be for work or in my free time. That's just what I'm interested in. But still, sometimes I'm taken aback by how evil people can be. And with Aaron specifically, to be so evil, to have so much evil in you at such a young age, and to just do it on a whim, at a moment of opportunity, not even to have planned it, and then to have no remorse after the fact. That doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't compute in my brain. How do you look into the eyes of a baby that you're hurting and continue to hurt them and not care after the fact? It makes no sense to me. It's just so far removed from something I can understand, which again, I think is a good thing. But now that I've given you all of the information, now that you've heard all of the details of this case, I'm going to ask you the question of the day, and that is this. Do you think that Aaron Campbell got an appropriate sentence for what he did? And just for good measure, I'm actually curious as to whether or not you think, if he is released, if he will reoffend. But anyways, guys, that completes this video. I hope you found it interesting and informative, and it gave you all of the information you could want when looking into this case. And of course, I want to thank you for remembering Alicia with me today. She was such a beautiful young girl who had her full life ahead of her. She had an entire ass future, all these things to do and accomplish and experience, and her family deserved to witness that. It is so tragic that something like this can and does happen, that this kind of thing happens, that her family has to live without her and has to live knowing what happened to her. And then this guy could be paroled when he's 40. Her parents are barely older than him. You know what? I would hate to be Aaron if he is paroled anywhere near her mom or her dad. That's all I'm going to say about that. But anyways, guys, please let me know of any cases you would like to see me cover in the future. I've been covering a lot of subscriber suggestions recently. This is one that kind of came upon my my eyes. I feasted my eyes on this case, and it wasn't recommended to me, but a lot of the ones that I've been doing in the last several months have been subscriber recommendations, because I love looking into the cases that you're suggesting, because I know you're filled with good ideas and good taste. Otherwise, you would not be here. If you haven't already, please don't forget to join the Brat Pack by subscribing and ringing that bell. I put out a new video every single week, and I would love to hang out with you. Yes, you specifically, you. And if you want to hang out more consistently, all my social media is listed down below for your convenience. There is my Facebook page, there is my Instagram, and there is my Twitter. There's also a link to my merch store. This is not my merch, this is Kendall Ray's merch. If this shirt's still available, you should buy it, because 100% of the proceeds go to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. So you get a sweet shirt, and you also get to make a donation, which is great. I also want to say one last thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this video, because that's super tight. And of course, I want to thank you guys for always being so supportive of my sponsors, because you rock. Don't ever change. And with all of that said, I just want to thank you for being here when you could literally be anywhere else in the world. That is tight. You are tight. Please stay safe and be a better person than you were yesterday. At the very least, be better than Aaron Campbell. And I hope to see you in my next video.